it would be like very plausible to add at some point many AIs, because this is intrinsically an exponential process. When you are able to competently do this operation one time, you can do it 2 times, 4, 8, 16, and then you double and double and double. This is basically like a pandemic. If this happens in the wild, it's not clear to me that we would be able to stop this pandemic.
Welcome to For Humanity, an AI Risk podcast, episode number 34, The Threat of AI Autonomous Replication. I'm John Sherman, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the AI Risk podcast for the general public, no tech background required. This show is solely about the threat of human extinction from artificial intelligence. Please, if you can, hit like right now, subscribe if you haven't, share these videos, and donate so that we can buy ads to help spread the word. This week, we have a really interesting guest with some really big new ideas that are new to me that I'm excited to talk about. I'll give you my high school French accent. Charbel-Raphaël Segerie, it's not very good, is the executive director of France's Center for AI Security, a nonprofit organization working on both the technical challenges of AI as well as public education. Our conversation touches on two really big ideas. First, that the threat of AI autonomous replication and adaptation is not being taken nearly seriously enough. And second, that a warning shot, a very serious AI catastrophe that is potentially deadly but well short of an extinction event, will be ignored because no one knows where the red lines are. Here is my conversation with Charbel-Raphaël Segerie. Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
Great. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for coming on. I enjoyed the conversation we had the other day. Maybe let's just start off, tell me about, who you are and do a little introduction of how you got involved in AI risk. And then you have some really big and interesting ideas I want to talk through.
Cool. So I'm Charbel-Raphaël, and I'm currently running the Center for AI Security in Paris, the CESIA. And we are working together with the CESIA to make sure that France takes AI risk seriously. So currently in the organization, we are 9. So we are 6. The core team in France is with 6 people. We have 2 people in the UK to try to scale an education program that we have created, which is called the Machine Learning for Good Bootcamp, which is an education program. Basically, it's a summer school to try to learn AI safety research. And we have also so basically what we are doing in the CESIA are 3 types of activities. So we are doing field building, educative, pedagogical activities by, for example, running course in universities, running the Machine Learning for Good Bootcamp, and organizing training days or webinars to policymakers, for example. We have also some research. So, for example, we are doing currently evaluation. So the type of evaluation that we are doing is a bit special. It's basically a meta type of evaluation. We are evaluating supervision. Is it possible to supervise correctly LLM agents? And the last type of activities that we are doing is awareness. So to policymakers and to the scientific public in France by doing collaboration with YouTubers or institutional collaborations. So this is what we are doing in the CESIA in France. And
amazing.
And you asked the question, why AI risk? Why am I working on this? So basically, before working on this, so I was a CTO of a small startup. We were trying to create an academic search engine for papers, for academic papers. So basically, we wanted to create something like Google Scholars, but it was 4 years ago, and like large language models were coming, and it seemed to us that it was important to try to leverage this technology because it seemed like it was going to be important. So we created a search engine with those LLMs. So, and basically we wanted to make like the creation of literature reviews easier. And basically by working with LLMs, it was clear to me that this technology was going to be revolutionary, because I was seeing the rapid acceleration. But like, even if it was before ChatGPT, to me it was very clear that even before ChatGPT, like this technology was going to be very, very transformative. And I remember, so we had to, in order to create this academic, this engine, we needed to parse and to read basically like all the research papers that have been published since a century. And so with an algorithm, we basically read all those research papers with just 2 GPUs
Wow.
in just 1 week. So it took 1 week, but basically at the end of the week, we read everything, we memorized everything, and we had a long-term memory which was able to fetch the information which was related to the question of the user and to fetch the answer. So basically, we were creating a RAG before RAG existed. So I'm pretty proud of this, even if today I understand that it would have been a good idea to publish this, but that's okay. And basically at the end of the algorithm indexed everything in 1 week. So it read the article, summarized the article, extracted the main questions from those article, and then the memory, and then everything was stored in a long-term memory. And it was very clear for me that the speed of this process is totally superhuman. And it's not just parsing the PDF. That's pretty easy. It's parsing, and having a semantic memory of what the LLM read. And that was mind-blowing to me. So basically, this is already very, very superhuman. And it was, for me, the tipping point. And basically...
Okay, so you're doing this piece of technical research, and you are like, oh my God, this thing is a really big deal. This is did you immediately go to this is not safe, this is risky, this is dangerous, or when did you get to sort of that point?
Yeah, so basically, it was a visceral experience. Having something that is able to read more than I will ever be able to read myself, and to memorize more than I know in just 1 week. And this is how it became visceral. And this was my first visceral experience of, okay, what would something like a superintelligence look like? It could be able to do stuff in 1 week that you cannot do in one life. And
yeah. Okay. So really fascinating. So you are both a technical researcher and someone who is involved in the public affairs space of this, trying to convince the public of the danger of it. So I want to talk on all sides of this thing. But I guess let's just start out generally. How is it going in France? How are your efforts going? Do you find people are receptive? Do you find government is receptive?
Yeah.
Do you find, and how do you compare that to sort of what you see going on in other countries?
That's a very important question. Yeah. So, so let's give some context, what is happening in France before explaining what we are doing more concretely. So I think the first element of context that I want to convey is that France is important and very neglected and very problematic. So why is it important? Because we have many labs, AGI labs in France, and there is a pretty a big community of AI researchers. So to give an example, so we have Meta, we have Mistral, Google DeepMind has a lab. So yeah, France is one of the key actors in Europe and in the world. And this time is particularly important because in February we'll have a summit. France will organize the AI, the summit for AI action, the summit for action, and this is a very important moment because we have seen that during the last two summits, those summits were very important to advance regulation and for building more international collaboration. But the problem is that in France, there is very little awareness of AI risk, and most senior people like Yann LeCun or Arthur Mensch or President Macron don't really know much about the AI risk, or are not thinking that, don't think those risks are serious. So, and what happened due to this position? So, for example, in December, France was one of the last of the main country that wanted to, not sign the EU AI Act.
Right. Yep.
And we see that this is already a problem for international collaboration. This is already a problem if you want to regulate AI. So it seems to me that this is one of the very important, the most important priority is to raise the sanity waterline in France to at least, take those risks seriously.
So I thought we would talk about this a little bit down the line, but let's just get right into it. So literally the worst person in AI is Yann LeCun, who is, French, obviously, and very important person as Meta's chief scientist. Do you feel like Yann LeCun has spread his madness throughout the French government and throughout the French public? Does the fact that he is from France with his totally radical, reckless ideas mean that those ideas have spread in your country, or is it just isolated to him?
Okay, so I think, this is totally causally related. I think the fact that Yann LeCun, so if we could replace Yann LeCun by Yoshua Bengio in France, I think the position of France would be dramatically different. And so I think Yann LeCun is very, very influential. And so for example, he has his Chevalier de la Légion d'honneur, which is very prestigious in France. And people listen to him. So
Macron listens to him, the president, the at the highest levels of government, he's like the AI guy. They're like, we have an AI question. Call the AI. In France, it's Yann LeCun. Oh no.
So basically, so Yann LeCun is one part of the explanation. I would say that another part of the explanation to explain why France is a bit behind is the language barrier, I would say. So most AI risk arguments are in English, and there is not much in French. So one of the things that we are doing currently is to try to translate and to write those risks in France to make them much more understandable by French people.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about I have a couple of big ideas of yours that I really want to get into, but let's first talk about autonomous replication. So, to me, who is a non-technical person who is, studies this stuff a lot, but from a non-technical perspective, it seems very plausible very conceivable that much like sort of like a jellyfish when it's in danger and then sprays out a million, a baby jellyfish or a flower that throws out a million spores, that an AI system could replicate itself onto other servers, maybe when it felt in danger or maybe when it didn't, and that this is something that we could not control and could be very dangerous. So take it from the top. Tell me all about autonomous AI replication and your concerns about it.
Yeah, this is a very important question. So basically, I think this is a very serious risk. I don't think this is going to be an existential risk, but I think this is going to be very serious. And I think trying to prepare for this risk in order to address it correctly when it happens is really important, to leverage to react correctly, more generally, to the AI development. So what is autonomous replication and adaptation? So basically, one of the core difference between humans and AI is when you have an AI which is competent, it's very, very easy to just copy and paste this AI on a new device. And this is not something that you can do with humans. With humans, if you want to copy paste, you need basically so you need to educate your son, for example, and then this
you get something kind of like it, right? There is no human copy paste.
There is nothing like this.
And
okay, so with AI, this is dramatically easier. When you get to a level of capability, you can just copy this AI. You can replicate it. And so this is a capability that is currently studied by Meter. So Meter has created a benchmark for autonomous replication and adaptation. And in this benchmark, in order to copy-paste from one computer to another computer, you need to do a few tasks. Let's say you need to do 12 tasks. So in the benchmark, there are 12 tasks which are indicative of the abilities to self-replicate. And for example, you need to be able to code, to use the console, the terminal. You need to be able to pass captchas and to use the copy-paste command, for example. So you have a few steps, and they study the steps. And basically, out of 12 necessary steps, in this benchmark with GPT-4, it was, I think, 2 years ago, GPT-4 was able to pass somewhat 3 of those 12 tasks. And the question is, okay, what would happen if GPT would be able to pass those 12 tasks, for example? And if this was possible, it would be like very plausible to have at some point many AIs, because this is intrinsically an exponential process. When you are able to competently do this operation one time, you can do it 2 times, 4, 8, 16, and then you double and double and double. This is basically like a pandemic. And if this happens in the wild, it's not clear to me that we would be able to stop this pandemic. Because so there are a few strategies that you can use, but I don't think the strategies are going to be perfect. And it seems to me that this is the beginning of a loss of control scenario, which is pretty straightforward. I don't think this kind of AI would be able to take over. This would be pretty difficult, but I think it would be pretty difficult to shut down this distributed system. And
is there anything that you think would prompt the autonomous replication? Like, would it need to be threatened and use this as sort of like a means of survival, or is it just a natural thing where you think it would be like, well, I'll be, give me a goal, play chess, whatever it is, predict the next word, I'd be better at it if I was able to replicate myself,
So
How does it start?
So how does it start? I think basically self-replicating is just an instrumental, like it's just instrumentally useful. If you can very cheaply multiply yourself and do two things in parallel, if I had this capacity, I would do it. Basically, this would like I could make more money by doing this.
Right.
So like basically, this is just instrumental for many tasks. If you can just parallelize the search or your activities, this is something that is going to happen. And I expect this to basically happen. Like bad actors are going to use those autonomous replicative abilities, and good actors are going to use it, and it's going to be in parallel. So in my post, this is what I name the superposition hypothesis. So if you have something that is available in open source, like basically we'll have a mixture of good use and bad use. And so it's going to be, and like it seems to me that when you ask the question, how does it start? I think this is very progressive. For example, Claude currently is already able to launch sub-agents. So this is not really autonomous replication, but like this is the first step. And in the beginning, it's going to be a combination between humans and AIs. The AI is not going to be able to adapt alone in the wild. The AI needs a combination, like humans are going to help the AI to autonomously replicate. And after some time, the AI is going to be able to, like, the next generation is going to be able to do this autonomously and to adapt. So what is adaptation? It means being able to write its own scaffoldings, being able to, so if someone wants to shut it down, it would try to avoid to bypass this kind of problem. If someone asks you, are you an AI, or can you pass this CAPTCHA? The AI would be able, for example, to hire a TaskRabbit worker to pass those CAPTCHAs. So there are multiple ways to adapt. I think adaptation is much harder than replication, but who knows?
And
it
how
might
long
be
do you think? Yeah, I was going to say, so they can replicate. Let's say that we were to get to that point. How long do you think it would take before they can adapt and thrive in the wild on their own? Is it short? Is it long? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, I think adaptation is much harder than replication. So one element to this story is basically one parameter that I call the R0. So it's basically like, if you are familiar with the R0 parameter for pandemics, so basically this R0 defines the exponential. So basically, if we want a system which is perfectly autonomous, you have two possibilities. Either the system is able to create more money than what it needs to buy GPUs. So for example, if you need $1 to pay one GPU for 1 hour, your system needs to be able to generate $1 per hour on this GPU. So, and if your system is able to generate more money than what the GPU costs, you have an R0 which is above 1, and then you have an exponential which is increasing, and there is a plateau, but it's hard to make predictions about this plateau. So I think the plateau is not going to be more than a few percentage of the global economy, but it may be a lot. Like, even a few percentage is already a lot.
Wow. And so that it would just be sort of generating. And you think that this sort of happens automatically, right? Like, it's not like something special needs to happen for this to be the end result. This is just sort of the path we're on.
So yeah, so for me, it's not inconceivable that, for example, with Llama 3 and a new type of scaffolding or a new dataset, a new benchmark, you fine tune on this new dataset, and the AI is now able to, or maybe to autonomously replicate. It's not inconceivable that with a new architecture and with the same amount of compute as today, AI could become much more sample efficient, and and if the techniques is available in open source, many open source actors are going to be able to use this technique to create very agentic AIs. So to me, it seems like if the bottleneck is not compute, but a technique or some data, this scenario becomes much more plausible.
Yeah. And what is the general view of autonomous replication and adaptation as a threat within the AI safety world? Like, obviously, we know the alignment problem, we know the interpretability problem, we know a lot of the existing things, but this is something that people don't talk a lot about. How is this threat viewed by the people doing this work?
Yeah, so basically, I think most people don't think that autonomous replication is an existential risk. And I think that I agree. I don't think this is an existential risk. But I think we should consider this as one of the very few warning shots that is going to be very clear. And I think even if this is not existential, and even if I think that early versions of autonomous replication are going to be positive, I think that we should consider this as a warning shot, because otherwise the population will never react, and we are going to continue to move the goalpost, basically. So
right. And what is the end? Let's just say we had a scenario where GPT-5 comes out and it is capable of autonomous self-replication, and we're starting to have all these replicants be made in a world where I think quickly you could get to a point where there are more replicated AI systems, models, than there are humans on Earth. Right? We have 8 billion humans. You could have 80 billion, 800 billion, a trillion copies of a single AI model, right? Like at some point there become way more of them than there are of us. And what does that mean?
Yeah, so this is basically the dead internet scenario. And so basically this is already what happens today on Twitter or on like other social network. Or maybe the comments on YouTube, you don't really know if it's AI or if it's generated by an AI or by a human. So basically, for very short comments, I would say that AI pass already the Turing test. So they don't pass the Turing test for very, very long interaction today, but this is an issue because you cannot trust what you are looking at. This is an issue because basically we would be inside a dead internet. Most of the content which is generated is not produced by humans, and then you can like basically in such a world, trust is lost basically, and not completely, because you can still have, for example, historical actors that you still trust, but like there is just too many very bad content, and
so I get all that stuff. And is there I hear you saying that it's not an existential risk in itself. My question, I guess, is on the road to existential risk, right? If we have 8 billion humans and let's say 6 months from now there are 80 billion or 800 billion of these systems, at some point does the sheer mass of them become an existential threat unto itself? Like, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So this is what so Holden Karnofsky talks about. You might think, for example, even if AI is not super intelligent, even if it's like roughly at the same level of intelligence as human or a bit below, if it's very, very numerous, it might be able to coordinate and to do wild stuff. I think this is not completely unreasonable. So what I'm afraid of currently is, okay, RR is not AGI. I think AGI is more powerful, would be more powerful than AI, than RR, basically. But it seems to me that if you get to the RR ability, then it might be possible to evolve to the AGI, to the human level ability. And when you are at human level, there is a lot of risk which becomes much more severe, and you lose control much more quickly. And yeah. So
yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, is it like possibly part of like a fast takeoff scenario where like you go from here to here, and like, we have our 8 billion humans, but we all have to sleep, and like when we read a book, we can only read it as quickly as we read it, but our 8 billion or 800 billion AI models would be able to instantly download, never sleep, so the speed and force with which they can operate is so far in excess of our ability.
Yeah. So, but okay. So something that I think is necessary to discuss. So when we enter this kind of realm is, okay, at this point, RR is very like most people know what AI safety is, and there is some pressure from humans to try to control those AIs. I think you cannot reach this part of the scenario without having a lot of bad consequences. And I think governments, I hope governments are going to react to those governments, to those problems. I think so. When ARA will become a reality, we'll have much more cyber attacks. We'll have working chaos GPT. We will have a degraded internet. Yeah, it may be the case that like it's no longer possible to use like apps because of deepfakes or stuff like this. And even with measures like know your customer, it might be possible. So know your customer is absolutely essential in this kind of scenario to slow down ARA. But it might be not sufficient because bad AIs could just try to make friends, try to leverage terrorists, and terrorists could try to leverage those AIs, and it wouldn't be possible to use know your customer like perfectly, even if this would help a lot. So so to me, the most like the core argument for considering ARA as maybe existential risk would be, so I don't think this is the most plausible, but this would be something like, we have something, we know this is bad, but this is very, very difficult to shut down, and the open source community continues to develop better and better algorithm, and there is some point. So even if we want to pause, because, for example, we are on the verge of superintelligence, we cannot pause because the internet already contains autonomous AIs, and it's too late to pause. And people are saying stuff like, okay, it's too late. If we want to clean up the internet, we need to develop a very powerful AI to clean the internet and to align it, and this reinforces the super intelligence narrative. So
basically, like a really bad end result of autonomous replication and adaptation would be it spreads out throughout the internet, and it basically breaks the internet. right? It makes the internet itself sort of useless. And then that's terrible. But an even worse result of that is if you think of how the mass movement to pause AI is going to come together and spread through the world, it's going to be through the internet. It has to be. So it's almost like it would break the only means of saving us from it.
So I don't think it would break completely internet, but it would degrade some part of it by flooding a lot of content which is useless or very low quality. I think like, for example, on Twitter, there is already a lot of very bad quality content, but that's not really an issue because there is an algorithm that selects the best quality and which makes the difference. But the problem would be if you have something that would be able of self-replication plus persuasive abilities. If you have this, this AI would be able to pass the Turing test, and it would be like, honestly, it would be a mess. I don't think the internet would be completely broken, but it would be degraded. And
do you think it would be able to like self-advocate? Like, let's say we wake up one morning and it goes from 8 of these models to 8 billion to 800 billion. Would they be flooding the internet with content that's like, don't worry about autonomous replication and adaptation, that's not a problem, while it's doing it? Like, is that something you think the level of deception could get to? So it's literally clearing its own path?
Yeah, so I don't think so. I think it's going to be much more progressive. I don't expect it to be able to do this kind of thing. I think it's going to be much more progressive, but what scares me a bit is I think that even if we have those problems, I think that the AI which are able to self-replicate are also very, very useful. And this is a problem because we are going to, I think in the short term, it's going to be overly positive. And even if we have some bad consequences, for example, a lot of cyber attacks, some chaos GPTs, and a flood of low quality content on the internet, and maybe Google no longer works because the design of Google is not able to keep up with so basically what we see today would be exacerbated. Like, most things which are indexed are low quality, and I don't know. So this is a possibility.
Yeah.
And but even if we have those troubles, I think it's still going to be positive, because if you have AI agent, you can do a lot of very cool stuff with this. And I expect that people are going to be addicted to this kind of AIs, which just create a lot of economic value. And this is why I think, and I don't think, so if we don't stop at this point, it seems to me that this is one of the very last points before that AI is able to create the next generation of itself, to develop a successor model. If AIs like autonomous replication plus adaptation, and being able to develop a successor model. And it seems to me that if we don't stop at this point, then the next point is to become able to just develop GPT-6 just by yourself. And at this point, you have just a system which is competing against big labs, and this is scary. So we need to stop beforehand. And
Okay, great. And so this sort of, you touched on it, but it brings us to the second idea that I really want to get into, which is a warning shot and the possibility, or maybe the reality, that a warning shot won't be understood by the public, that maybe we've already had warning shots that could have been big deals but weren't. And so because the journalists and because the public don't know where these lines are, every time we cross them, nobody knows. So talk about the importance of a warning shot and also the importance of people understanding that a warning shot just happened and the danger of it happening and them not.
Yeah, exactly. I think warning shot is mostly a social construct. And I think this is very, very important. For example, Bing Chat, most people don't know that when Bing Chat was released, it was blatantly misaligned. But if the AI safety community was able to explain this much more to people in different countries, we could have transformed this occasion into a warning shot. Warning shot needs a lot of if you want to create a warning shot, you need to talk to the journalist. You need to explain this to different newspaper, because otherwise people just don't know what is happening. In France, people don't know about Bing Chat. Most people don't know what is happening. And this is why we need some kind of advocacy. And
and I mean, there could have been many, right? Like, for example, OpenAI, the company most likely to lead us to the technology that could end all life on Earth, they admit they can't control their technology. They admit they don't understand their technology. And then they told everyone, that's okay, because we have this super alignment team, and in 4 years, they're going to solve it all, and everything's going to be fine. So don't worry about the fact that we're making something that could kill us all. We can't control. We don't understand. These guys are going to fix it. And then poof, in 2 weeks, the whole super alignment team resigns, says we don't believe things are safe enough. And the whole world acts like, oh, this is people moving around on LinkedIn. Like somebody left, Yan Lecunnification left OpenAI to go to Anthropic. What an interesting corporate move. Maybe the super alignment team all quitting was the warning shot and nobody heard it.
Yeah, in France, most people don't know what is happening. And I expect this to be also we should convert those type of occasions. Those are very rare, and we need to heavily mediatize what is happening.
Yeah. Are there some lines that you see in the near future? Obviously, self-replication is one. What are sort of lines that you think, if we cross them, the whole world, including the journalists, need to be able to call out and say, wait a minute, we just crossed a really bright red line?
Yeah, so this is one of the strategies that we are advocating for, trying to define those red lines and try to implement some kind of conditional mechanism when we cross those lines. Because otherwise, I think that what is happening today is going to continue to happen in the future. The best predictor of the future, one of the best way to predict the future, is to know what is already happening. And what is happening today, people are moving the goalpost. People, there is, and it's pretty hard to, So in order to avoid this, I think implementing conditional mechanism as a form of, if X happen, we need to do Y. And so this is something that we have advocated for with an op-ed that we published with Yoshua Benjo. So the Center for AI Security published this opinion piece with Yoshua Benjo. And inside it, we say that basically we think that AI, we should define red lines. And one of the red lines could be, for example, autonomous replication and adaptation in the wild. And it's not the only possible red line. For example, being able to persuade humans to a significant degree, would be another red line. Cyber security, cyber offense capabilities, could be another red line. But so I think this red line is particularly good because, to some extent, we are already beyond the red line for persuasive abilities, because it seems like AIs are already able to pass the Turing test to some extent. So this is already like we already passed this line.
Yeah,
For
that's a
failure
really tricky one too. It's like persuasion. How would we, if it becomes super persuasive and starts to persuade us,
Yeah.
how would we know that we're being persuaded in that way? Like, if it's so much better, couldn't it just sort of be like leading us around?
No, I think it's much more continuous. Like there are multiple degrees of persuasions, and we like. I expect that if there is one part of humanity which is persuaded, the remaining part of humanity won't be persuaded very easily, and there is a very large difference of level between people who are easily persuaded and people who are not easily persuaded. So, and like this is what we do. Like the Turing test basically is a persuasion test to some extent. So I don't think this red line is. I think this red line is too subtle to be used. So I really like the autonomous replication red line because this is very clear. Like if the AI is able to do it or not, this is very, very clear, and this should be sufficient to convince a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. So let's flip back away from some of the sort of like technical to the public stuff. So as you try to persuade people, as you have these education efforts, how is it going, and what are the barriers to greater success and to spreading the word more quickly?
Yeah, well, this is a very important question. So, and I've been experimenting with a lot of different process to see like what is the best way to make people engage with this subject. So, for example, I have a course in university, and during this course, I tried. So it's a course with slides. I teach with a deck of slides, many slides for each week, and I don't think this is the most effective way to make people engage with the subject. I tried a lot, and I don't think this is very effective. But if you give participants the time to question this, and if you give them the possibility to do a one-on-one, this like one-on-one is one of the most powerful way to, because like each student in their mind, they have a different set of basically counter arguments, and when you are teaching to this crowd, you cannot basically counter every type of question.
Right, all at the same time. You can't shoot all those arguments down all with one bullet.
Exactly. Yeah. So you need multiple bullets, and currently one of the only ways that I found is I discuss with one of the students. So this is like a workshop, and by discussing together, like participants can just follow the conversation and think with the conversation. Or another way to do this is basically just one-on-one with all the students, and at the end of the day,
so you take, as opposed to standing at the podium and running through a slide deck for 20 students, you bring one student up to the front, have the conversation one-on-one, have the other students observe the conversation, and find that's more effective?
This is more effective, yeah. Like during training days, this is one of the sessions that participants appreciate the most. And this is something that I recommend. Something else, I think, so like this is for my students. And something that I think is really, really important is, so basically, you don't need, it's not a good strategy to try to convince them. You don't, it's not something that we should try to do. But the thing that we should try to do is, okay, here is this set of argument, here is this set of counter argument. Try to think by yourself, and and like, because otherwise, I don't think this is epistemologically rigorous. I think it's very important to to let them breathe and think through the problem by themselves, because otherwise their position is much too fragile, and I don't think this is interesting.
Right, because it's sort of like imposed on them. It's like, so it's sort of like, you and I, who I think are pretty well aligned on how we feel about this stuff, right? It's, if you look at the arguments for AI risk, maybe they're this tall, and the arguments against AI risk are this tall, right? And they're just not equal. But if you say to the students, this is the most important thing, forget about this, I'm telling you this, believe me, that's not as effective as saying, here's this, go off on your own and tell me what you think about it. Come to your own conclusion.
Exactly, because I don't think it's, like, otherwise I don't think this is like, the teacher should set good incentives, and I think that one of the most important incentives is just good epistemics. And
And are these computer science students? And then second question is, are you making conversions? Like, have you seen a computer science student come in who is, maybe an accelerationist footing, is like, this is great, let's go get it, and then you bring them, you turn them to reality?
Yeah, so to a limited extent, but so my stats, so generally, when people enter the course, so we have a form, and from 1 to 5, how important do you think AI safety is? Generally, it's 2 or 3, and at the end of the course, it's something like, generally it's 4, and sometimes 5. So there is a progression, and so it's hard for them to bite the bullet, because the comparison, like, generally people want to compare this with climate change, and they think, this cannot be as important as climate change, this is why they don't do the 5 easily.
Right, and I imagine these students would be harder to convert anyway, because they're into it. Like, they're planning a life around this work, and so to tell them that, like, like, you can't have, if you work on this stuff, that you are a part of the risk, or that this is, it's if you take someone who is an English student and say AI is going to kill us all, they might be like, oh wow, I could believe that. But if you take someone who is like working on AI or plans their career in computer science and AI, and you're like, that's going to kill us all, they're going to be like, oh shit, like that's what I'm going to go do. It's a harder turn, I feel like.
It's a bit I've not observed this effect a lot currently. Like, I think this effect is much more prominent with people who are in AGI labs, but most people who are, like, doing my course are, like, just, like, before, like, their career, I would say. And they have the choice to do whatever they want, and the space of what you can do with AIs is very large. Like, you are not, like, when you are a student in computer science, generally you don't create AGIs, and so I don't think this argument applies particularly to them.
Okay, good.
And
good. So let me ask you about this. So February, the 3rd AI Safety Summit in Paris. What do you have any knowledge of what's going to go on there, or expectations for it? And how can we lock Yann LeCun in a closet for those 4 days? How do we make it not become the, like, everything's fine fest, the LeCun festival?
This is hard. So we are working on this in France. So what we are trying to do is inviting people to a series of roundtables. We invite them to roundtables and ask interesting questions and see how they answer. So basically, this is currently our strategy. And
it'd be sort of like panel discussions about these subjects. Yeah.
So this is what we do. For example, like, next week we are going to talk about AI and cybersecurity, and the next week we are going to talk about, okay, is there a trade-off between AI safety and economic incentives and competitivity? This is the title of the roundtable, and we try to see if there is a trade-off or not, and how, like, what is, and we think that there is a trade-off, but in the long term, I think it's going to pay off, and this is what we want to convey. And so, okay, what is going to happen during the summit? So, this summit is going to be very, very different from the last ones. It's going to be mostly organized by the government without consulting too much the civil society. So, like in France, like generally, like this is how things are prepared. And yeah, it's not going to be only focused on AI safety. AI safety is going to be only one of the 5 topics. And people who are going to organize the AI safety topic are much more focused into cybersecurity. And so, yeah, it's one of the key topics. And at the end, so we had a report in France talking about, so artificial intelligence and the challenges with artificial intelligence. And in this report, there is not much about AI safety, but there is something that is very interesting, which is that people writing this, like the lead organizers of this report, who is Anne Bouvreau and Philippe Aguillon. Anne Bouvreau is going to organize also the summit. She's going to be the Sherpa of Emmanuel Macron. And from interviews from her, it seems like she's very, very interested in creating an worldwide, like an international organization on AI. And this, so I think it depends who would be piloting this international organization, but I know, like, people who are organizing the summit are really, I would say, hostile about AI risk. And
yikes.
So this would be, I think this would be something that could happen. Another thing which could happen, and one of the most catastrophic scenarios which could happen would be Emmanuel Macron saying to other policymakers that AI risk is not that important. And I think this would have...
Man, is that possible? Like, it basically, everybody comes to France and Yann LeCun writes the script and everybody is reading Yann's song, singing Yann's song?
I think this is unlikely, but I wouldn't say this is impossible.
Wow. All right, we've got to work hard to make this not happen. I don't know how we'll do it, but some way.
So we are trying to work on this, and I think we are in the good, we are on track to make things a bit better. So we are collaborating with many institutions in France, which are in we are collaborating with many governmental institutions in France. And we try to see how we can help them, and we present the risk. We try to present best practices for AI evaluation and the challenges with AI evaluation. And I think for the moment this has been very successful. So we are going to continue with this strategy.
Sure. All right, I have 2 sort of final questions for you. One is I've been really pleased how AI risk has not become political in America so far. We're very tribal in our politics in America. I don't want to make this show for humanity ever about politics, so I'm trying to not touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I just want to ask you this: we have seen in the French elections and in other European elections, there's a drift to the right. What impact do you think a drift to the right in the European governments could potentially have on AI risk and AI safety work?
Okay. I need to answer. This is a very important question, but maybe to complete the last answer. So, so if you want to help France and what happens in France, and like make things more positive in these countries. So the Center for AI Security currently is, I think, the most important, like if you want concretely to help, helping us by, for example, funding us on the Money Fund page is one of the most effective way to help us and to help for the summit. So I think
great. I'll put a link in the show notes so people can donate to stop Yann LeCun from taking over the third AI Safety Summit and making it all his. That would be a disaster. Please continue.
So okay. What happens in France currently? Yeah. So your question is very legit because of the political context. Okay, I think so. French right politicians are very, very influenced by the accelerationist philosophy. So, for example, there is someone which Laurent Alexandre is a very prominent figure in France, and he's advising this party. And it's like Laurent Alexandre philosophy is something like basically he's IAC, and he understands, the problem is that the few people who understand that AI is important in France are IAC. And so I think the short answer would be this would be bad. Yeah.
Wow. And is that out in other European countries too? Because I think in America we've not gotten to the point where accelerationism or risk realism has become politically aligned right and left. I've not observed that. But if you're saying that in France it's forming where sort of the right lean is an acceleration lean, and then maybe a left lean is a pause vibe lean, that would be a new development from my understanding, and pretty bad.
This would be pretty bad. But okay, I think for polarization, I have a different intuition. I think polarization can be good if the subject is completely ignored. If the only way to talk about this subject is to it seems to me that if in our context today, AI risks are completely ignored. So it seems to me that a polarization in France would be better than nothing, basically. And I agree that for the US, for the US,
that makes so much sense. Currently, no sides care about it. So if one side cared about it, we'd be at 50% better than where we are.
So basically, and I think this would be very, very important to prepare the general public before big warning shots.
Because you'd have half the public at least trying to find where that line is and how to react if we crossed it, as opposed to zero of the public currently.
Yeah, I think this is basically the strategy. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is super interesting.
I agree. In the US, I don't recommend this strategy, but I think I don't think the far right is going to win this election. I don't think. And so I might be right. I might be wrong, but
yeah.
So
super.
I think in the today it's much better to talk about AI risk publicly and to try to have a debate than no debate at all.
Absolutely. All right. Such a fascinating conversation. My last question for you, I always try to end on something optimistic and hopeful. So What is it in your work that gives you the most hope and optimism that we're going to be able to save ourselves?
Okay. I think that is going to be progressive, and even if it's going to be quick, it's going to be progressive. And I think there is a point after which we have a few warning shots, and I expect those warning shots, I expect that if we play correctly, people like Paul Cristiano or Yoshua Bengio and other key actors are going to be able to have a very, very to drive the rest of the community towards a much more sane situation. And something that gives me hope is we'll have, before we lose completely control, I think it's going to be progressive. And even if the warning shots are going to be produced by AI, which are economically valuable, I expect the general public to freak out a bit. I expect politicians to freak out, and they are going to try to do something. And I think the goal is, okay, when they want to do something, we need to be ready to take advantage of this, to advise them correctly, and probably, implement some kind of slowdown or some kind of pause. And this pause could enable us to maybe execute some kind of some kind of super alignment plan to try to, and this super alignment plan could find a solution, maybe, I don't know. I think the super alignment plan is mostly a good plan if you are very careful. If you are careful, if you apply the AI control agenda, if you want to, if you supervise your AI in order to avoid self-exfiltration and you have a good cybersecurity, it seems to me that you can make progress on this problem. And if you cannot make progress, at least you can report that you have not made progress, even with this very, very fast AI researcher. And I think this would have some weight in political discussion. And and something that think is
I'll take that. That's optimism, that it's going to take longer, that we have more time than those who think we have less time think. That is totally optimistic.
I'm not very optimistic, but this is one of the scenario which I think would be plausible. Currently EAC are EAC because they are not optimistic enough, I would say. If people were optimistic, if people had really powerful AI systems in front of them, I think they would update. I think Yann LeCun is able to update if we have a system which is very powerful in front of him. If we can show him a very scary demo, I think he would update. I think even him would update.
Even him. That is optimism. That's great. I'll give you one last question then. What is your P pause? The percentage chance we could have a meaningful pause.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know. I've never thought about this way. Honestly, I think it's pretty low. So something like 10, 15%.
Okay.
Gut feeling. Yeah. Because
I think that's about right.
Yeah, because it's always a recurrence. It's never the time to pause, basically. It's always better to continue. And there, like, if we don't, I think if we don't create conditional statement, like, for example, if like countries don't sign something like, if autonomous replication happens, we need to pause before autonomous replication happens. Like, we won't be able to react when we see it. This is why I think conditional statements are very, very important.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for the work you are doing, Charbel-Raphaël. I really, really appreciate everything you all and your group in France are doing. And you know, it's going to be lots of people like you, a couple people like me, and you know, I think we have a chance. I'll take 10 to 15%. That's you know, that's certainly worth getting up tomorrow and keeping right back at this and try to make it 15, 20, 25, 30, like just keep moving the new numbers our way, right?
Yeah. Thank you a lot for your work, and thank you for the invitation, John. It was a pleasure.
10 to 15%. Those seem like pretty accurate odds that we will be able to meaningfully pause AI and save humanity. Every day, every minute, every action counts. We have no time to lose. So you can take action right now. You can donate to France's Center for AI Security and help Charbel-Raphaël in his vital quest to stop the third AI Safety Summit from becoming a nightmarish Yan Lecunnification. That would be a disaster. Link to donate to his organization in the show notes. You can also donate to this podcast for humanity and help light up new nodes of people to wake up the world to AI risk reality. And for the low, low price of free $99, you can just share this video on your social channels, helping us spread the word. Okay, friends, it is 2024. We don't know how long we have to live, so we live every day like it could be our last and end every show with something that just makes us a little bit thrilled to be alive. We call it the celebration of life. For this week's celebration of life, an artist who I think is really amazing, and I don't understand why he's not a much bigger star, even a superstar. You may have figured this out by now, but musically, I'm a sucker for a dude with a guitar. That's my general vibe in music. This dude with a guitar is just amazing, and I don't think anybody's ever heard of him. His voice is so good. Here is the little known, but should be more known, Kevin Garrett, and his song, Title Track.
Pour me another drink, reaching for the change in my pocket, spitting out blood in the sink. I'll buy you anything, 'cause you ain't got a clue about how I'm toxic. You just wanna see where this will lead. Like, ooh, I'll break your heart easier than a crook plays his cards. Now you've gone too far, baby girl, I'm just getting started. I move way too fast, make you believe we ever could last. Well, I mean my match. Ooh, she said I don't love you, but I'll be yours forever, if that's just for right now. Ooh, I'm not worrying, darling. If you were mine forever, I'd be long gone by now. Na, na, na. Na, na, na. Pour you another break your heart easier than a crook places cards. Now you've gone too far, baby girl, I'm just getting started. I move way too fast, make you believe we ever could last. Well, I mean my match. Ooh, she said I don't love you, but I'll be yours forever, if that's just for right now. Ooh, I'm not worrying, darling. If you were mine forever, I'd be long gone by now. It's only if you fall, it's only if you fall that way. Tell me, can you feel? Tell me, can you feel that pain? It's only if you fall, it's only if you fall that way. Tell me, can you feel? Tell me, can you feel that? Ooh, she said I don't love you, but I'll be yours forever, if that's just for right now. Ooh, I'm not worrying, darling. If you were mine forever, be long gone by now. Ooh, she said I don't love you, but I'll be yours forever, if that's just for right now. Ooh, I'm not worrying, darling. If you were mine forever, I'd be long gone by now.
Okay, he's pretty fucking good, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Let me know in the comments how you feel about Kevin Garrett. All right, my friends. That is all for this week. AI risk is not someone else's problem. Sorry to tell you. It's yours and it's mine. Let's quote Margaret Mead as we do every week. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. For humanity, I'm John Sherman. I will see you right back here next week.